The 2023 Fiba World Cup, the biggest international basketball tournament in the world. An exciting tournament that displays the many unique styles of basketball from around the globe, with each country battling for basketball supremacy and glory. Today, the road to the 2023 FIBA Basketball World Cup begins as teams start to finalize their lineups and rotations. And in today's video, I will begin a brand new series that will talk about the important players that y'all should know from each national team that will be competing in the World Cup.
But Ari, how the hell are you gonna talk about every single team in the World Cup? There's 32 of them.
Well, to answer that question, lil bro, it's simple. I will just talk about 2 groups of 4 teams per video since there are 8 groups with 4 teams each.
Oh, I get it now. Thank you.
You're welcome, lil bro, anytime. And now that we got all that out of the way, let's begin this series by first talking about Groups A and B. Group A has Angola, the Dominican Republic, the Philippines, and Italy. Group B has South Sudan, Serbia, China, and Puerto Rico. And by the way, feel free to skip ahead in this video's timeline to the specific country you wanna learn about. Alright, you got that? Cool, let's do this! Let's start this video off by first talking about Angola. Angola is ranked as the 41st best team in the world according to the FIBA rankings, and Angola's head coach is the Spaniard Josep Pep Claros, who has coached 5 different national teams, and he has coached professionally in Europe, Asia, Africa, and also North and South America. And Angola is bringing in one NBA player who is technically their best player, and Bruno Fernando. Yes, the big man from the Atlanta Hawks. And Angola's best defensive player is also Bruno Fernando because he led the team with 1 block per game during the qualifiers. And Angola's X factor has to be Childe Dondao by far, because even though he is 5'6", he's such an amazing scorer and two-way player because bro can literally score the ball at a very high level while also being a pest on the defensive side of the basketball, as Childe led his country in scoring, assists, and steals in the qualifiers with averages of 12 points, 3.6 assists, and 3.3 steals per game in just 23 minutes of action per game. And this basically proves that you should never underestimate Childe Dondao and Angola. Next, I will talk about the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic is ranked as the 23rd best team in the world according to the FIBA rankings. Dominican Republic's head coach is Argentinian Nestor Garcia, who has coached multiple national teams, and he has coached professionally both in the Latin Americas and in Europe. The Dominican Republic is also bringing in 3 NBA players who are Karl Anthony Towns, Chris Duarte, and Al Horford. Cat is obviously their best player because he is a 3-time NBA All-Star, and I do not need to explain further because it's Karl Anthony Towns and y'all should know him already. The Dominican Republic's best defensive player is also Cat in my opinion, but I would not be surprised if Al Horford or Angel Delgado snatches this title from Cat because they both have better defensive instincts than him. The Dominican Republic's X factor in my opinion is Chris Duarte from the Sacramento Kings. Chris will definitely step up on both ends of the floor because he now has the chance to show his skills with the ball finally in his hands. Plus, I won't be surprised if Chris scores 20 a game because Chris actually averaged 15 points a game in the qualifiers, and I do not expect any less. Next, I will talk about the Philippines. Gilas is ranked as the 40th best team in the world according to the FIBA rankings, and Gilas' head coach is Chot Reyes, who has coached multiple Philippine national team iterations, 1.0, 2.0, whatever .0, and he has also coached professionally in the Philippines. And Gilas is bringing in one NBA player after securing Jordan Clarkson's commitment. And Clarkson is obviously their best player since he is a former NBA 6th Man of the Year winner and technically one of the best NBA veterans in the NBA today. And I don't need to explain further because it's Jordan Clarkson and y'all should know him already. And Gilas' best defensive player is either Junmar Fajardo or Kai Soto. but it really depends on who is available. But both of them actually have a very large chance of being a part of the national team since they both share a ton of international basketball experiences, both on their national team debuts and of course their individual overseas careers. Gilas's X factor has to be Dwight Ramos by far, because Dwight is a very versatile player that can impact both ends of the floor with his size and great instincts, and he really just fits the mold of an X factor because he has the ability to surprise a lot of people with his game alone. Lastly, I will talk about Italy to end our discussion for Group A. Italy is ranked as the 10th best team in the world according to the Fiba rankings, and Italy's head coach is the legendary Gianmarco Poggecco, who has coached multiple Italian national teams, and he has coached professionally in Italy, and he is also known as one of the biggest figures in both the Italian and European basketball world. And Coach Poggecco is personally my favorite European coach because of his pure excitement and passion for the game of basketball. I mean, just look at that passion. Anyways, Italy is also bringing in one NBA player who is Simon Fontecchio, but they are also bringing in a lot of former NBA players and European superstars like Nico Mannion, Nicolo Melli, and many more. And Simon Fontecchio is obviously their best player since he's in the NBA with the Utah Jazz, and also he averaged 13 points a game in his final season in Europe with Baskonia. And Italy's best defensive player has to be Nicolo Melli in my opinion because he can play both the 4 and the 5 positions, and you already know how amazing it is to be a versatile big man in Europe. You're gonna get them blocks, boy. Italy's X factor in my opinion has to be the young Matteo Spagnolo because he had such great scoring performances in last year's Euro Cup with averages of 12 points a game, and I think he's just very capable of surprising people in the World Cup with his great scoring ability alone. Alright y'all, let's now talk about Group B. I will first start this discussion by first talking about South Sudan. South Sudan is ranked as the 62nd best team in the world according to the FIBA rankings, and South Sudan's head coach is Luol Deng. Yes, Luol Deng, the NBA veteran and former 2-time NBA All-Star, is also now South Sudan's Basketball Federation president. Ain't that cool? South Sudan will most likely not bring an NBA player because Wenyen Gabriel hasn't been considered to even be a part of the team as of the recording of this video. But if Wenyen actually plays for South Sudan, good for them. But even without their lone NBA player, South Sudan still has a lot of talent. Noni Omot is obviously their best player because he is the reigning Basketball Africa League MVP and a 2023 Basketball Africa League champion. Plus, Mr. Nuni here averaged 15 points a game in the qualifiers. South Sudan's best defensive player has to be Deng Akuth, in my opinion, because he can play both the 4 and the 5. Plus, he averaged 5 points, 6.1 rebounds, and 1.1 blocks per game in the qualifiers. South Sudan's X factor in my opinion has to be the young Bol Kuol because he has the body and the potential to make a difference on both sides of the basketball during South Sudan's games, and since he really knows how to utilize and use his own body to his advantage, which is just rare in basketball these days. Next, I will talk about Serbia. Serbia is ranked as the 6th best team in the world according to the FIBA rankings, and Serbia's head coach is the legendary Svetislav Pesic, who has coached multiple national teams, and he has coached many teams professionally in Europe with multiple championships under his belt, and he is also a FIBA Hall of Famer. But even though Serbia will not bring the current NBA champion and finals MVP Nikola Jokic and arguably the best player in Europe who is now an NBA player in Vasily Micic, Serbia is still bringing in 2 NBA players who are Bogdan Bogdanovic and Nikola Jovic, while also still bringing a very stacked European veteran roster. Bogdan Bogdanovic is obviously their best player because he's in the NBA, plus he's one of the best shooters and scorers in the world. Serbia's best defensive player is the big man Nikola Milutinov, who is one of the best bigs in Europe. And Serbia's X-factor in my opinion has to be Nemanja Nedovic because he can score at a very high level and he can make Serbia's offense flow very well by just simply moving the ball around the floor. And that's why he is one of the best players in Europe today. Next, we will talk about China. China is ranked as the 27th best team in the world according to the Fiba rankings, and China's head coach is the Serbian veteran Sasha Djordjevic, who has coached multiple national teams and he has coached many teams professionally in Europe while also winning multiple championships as both a player and a coach. And China is bringing in one NBA player after securing Kyle Anderson's commitment. And y'all might be wondering on how Kyle Anderson joined China's national team. Well, the answer there is quite simple. Kyle is actually 1/8 Chinese, and his family roots can be traced all the way to his maternal grandmother who was born to a Chinese father, which made Kyle eligible to become China's naturalized player. And Kyle is obviously their best player since he's an NBA player, and I do not need to explain further because it's slow-mo Kyle Anderson, and y'all should know him already. China's best defensive player is the former Houston Rocket big man Zhou Qi, who is one of Asia's best big men. China's X-factor in my opinion has to be the big man Wang Qilin, who is the best big man in China with a modern skill set that practically allows him to score and defend at all levels efficiently. And by the way, he is 7 feet tall, so you better watch out for Wang Qilin. The last national team that I will discuss in today's video is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is ranked as the 20th best team in the world according to the Fiba rankings, and Puerto Rico's head coach is Nelson Colon, who has coached many professional teams in Puerto Rico, and by the way, he is a 4-time BSN champion. You know the Puerto Rican league that DeMarcus Cousins played last season? Yup, this dude has 4 Puerto Rican rings. That's just amazing. And sadly, Puerto Rico will not bring their lone NBA player, who is Jose Alvarado from the New Orleans Pelicans, because sadly, Jose is still recovering from his tibia injury in his right leg, so get well soon, Mr. Jose Alvarado. But even without their lone NBA player, Puerto Rico still has a lot of talent, like Tremont Waters. Tremont Waters is obviously their best player because he's the best point guard in all of Puerto Rico, aside from, Jose Alvarado. But anyways, Tremont actually averaged 15 points a game in the qualifiers, and don't doubt Tremont because even though he's 5'11", he can score on Victor Wembanyama, and if he can score on Victor Wembanyama easily, I don't expect him to stop scoring at a high level in the World Cup. Puerto Rico's best defensive player has to be Ismael Romero because he can play both the 4 and the 5 positions, plus he averaged 10.5 points, 6.4 rebounds, and a block per game in the qualifiers. Puerto Rico's X-factor in my opinion has to be Chris Ortiz, because he has consistently performed so well for Puerto Rico in both the OQT, aka the Olympic qualifying tournament, and the AmeriCup, with averages of 12.5 points per game in the Olympic qualifying tournament, aka the OQT, in Serbia, and he averaged 15 points a game in the AmeriCup, which is just amazing. And I won't be surprised if Chris continues his great scoring performances in the FIBA Basketball World Cup. And that basically wraps up our discussion about Groups A and B of the 2023 FIBA Basketball World Cup. And don't forget, ladies and gents, to tune in next week because I will cover Group C and D. Alright y'all, make sure to hit and leave me a like in today's video to show me that y'all actually enjoyed the video from start to finish. And I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the red subscribe button to join the OTL family today. God bless you, and I shall see you all next week. Goodbye.